Well, I suppose I want to turn this into a funny story because it is kind of funny, but it's not entirely a funny story. My dad has stage 4 lung cancer, had it for 2.5 years, and the way they treat that is they give you these different chemicals, and until they stop working against the cancer, then they come up with new ones that they give you, and they keep doing that until they run out of stuff, and that's pretty much the deal. Or until the chemicals, which are fairly toxic, some of them, um, are going to cause some other side effect, which inadvertently ends up uh, killing you. Now they're pretty good about preventing that, but eventually your body gets pretty messed up. So the thing is that my dad was fairly good initially, but then over time, he's 80 years old, all these chemicals start doing different things. There's side effects from the cancer. Um, there's side effects from the medications, and even the medications that aren't super toxic, things like Avastin that work on blood vessels, ended up causing internal bleeding and additional problems. And then the cancer itself causes problems like bone fractures and also pinched nerves where the bone gets misaligned against a nerve, and a bunch of stuff. And so into about 2 years out, then these things started to add up. And so lately there's been an issue with breathing. Now he gets out of breath, and the thing is, he's kind of like a tough guy, so he sort of doesn't tell the doctors exactly what's going on. So I say, do you tell the doctors about the fact that you have labored breathing, have a hard time? He goes, yeah, sure, I tell him. But then, I mean, I figured out what he really says. Yeah, I'm having a hard time breathing, but not like really emphasizing it. Because what had happened is he just got worse and worse, where he couldn't get up from a seat without being out of breath. And so I said, well, you got to tell him that, like I figured out he's not really telling him that. He's just saying, yeah, I'm a little out of breath. Well, that's not the same thing. So anyway, what happened was it wasn't too bad, but then it got worse. And so I was saying, well, you got to tell the doctor. He said, well, no, it's because of I had low hemoglobin, and that's why. And but then they got this hemoglobin up, the stuff that carries oxygen, and that wasn't the problem. He said, well, it's because of chemo, because chemo can do that, and it can, but it wasn't that either. And so what happened recently is that he had chest pain while I was there. That heavy feeling in the chest, and I know that means kind of heart problems and stuff. And so I said, that's really serious. You're out of breath. You've got chest pain and stuff. But I know I can't tell him to go to the hospital because he won't go. So I decided, okay, I know that in just a couple days he's going to see a nurse to get chemo again. And I also know that I can sort of play it this way. I can say, well, if it happens again, you have to call me right away, and we'll get you to the emergency room because this is serious stuff. And he said, yeah, I'll definitely do that. But I was pretty concerned, but just in 2 days I know he was going to go see a nurse, so I said, well, you've got to tell her exactly what's going on. Tell her all your symptoms. Don't hold back and say you're a little out of breath. You can't even get out of a chair with being totally unable to breathe and stuff. And the thing is, it comes and goes. So when it gets better, he says, well, it's getting better. But he didn't tell him this. And I said, and what's happened is there have been a lot of little issues that have come up. And unfortunately, I mean, it really sucks. They have to treat them and work with them. And he didn't used to have really any major health problems. And now all these things, there have been numerous things have come up really as side effects of cancer and all those drugs. And so what happened is yesterday, which was when he was going to see the nurse to get chemo, which he did, he went out to measure a site. So he's still up for doing that, even though he was way out of breath and believe it or not, on the site had chest pains and didn't tell anybody, and decided to keep on going and measuring it in the hot sun until another guy his age, who kind of knew how to handle him too, said, you know, I'm really tired, let's sit down. And my dad said to me, he said, boy, I'm sure glad that guy said that, because he wouldn't have, because he's a tough guy. I love him, but that's just nuts. But he has to be strong. And also there's a psychological thing. He doesn't want to know that there's another problem. He's pretending and hoping it'll go away. So this was the time. It happened one day over the next. This was just, you know, a couple days apart. Chest pain. So this is when he's supposed to call me, and we're going to take him to the emergency room, because I was expecting it to happen, and I knew at that point he would go. But no, he didn't. Because, and I told him, I was just in the hospital with him a moment ago. Here's my official badge right over here. I'm going to go back in a little while. I said, well, why didn't you call me, you know, and we'd go. Remember we talked about that? And he goes, yeah, but they went away. So, you know, the fine print was, yes, I'll call you if they continue indefinitely and don't go away. But if they go away, it doesn't count. And I told him, you know, that was, what did I say? So we talked about that. Oh yeah, I told him, I go, that was pretty stupid. And but I didn't push it, just said it just like that. And he's a cool guy, because he said, yeah, that's pretty stupid. You know, it's like admitting it, that like we had agreed that, and he said that definitely would be the smart thing to do. So what did he do? He went ahead and he went to his appointment to get the chemo, and he got the chemo, and then on the tail end of that, because he was also supposed to talk to the nurse, this is just in case he didn't call me, he was supposed to tell the nurse everything, and he did. He told her, really, not that he has a little problem breathing, but the whole bit. Anyway, so guess what? She said, you have to go to the emergency room right now. And he called me. And yeah, and he ended up in the emergency room, and they started looking into things and all. And as of now, they've ruled out a lot of things which could be really bad, like a heart attack, and like a pulmonary embolism, blood clot in the lung, and a lot of these really bad things. And they don't know what it is. His heart rate goes up to 160 beats per minute from 75 or 85 beats per minute for 3 seconds, and drops back down. That was happening all last night. And today he's better. His heart is behaving normally, and what's happened is that he still has some shortness of breath, even when he's just laying in the hospital bed. So there's something wrong, and so there's a pulmonologist, a cardiologist, an endocrinologist, and all these other people, doctors he's accumulated now, trying to figure out what the deal is. But here's perhaps where the funny part comes in. The chemo makes him constipated, and so he takes a stool softener when he gets chemo, so he doesn't get constipated the next day. But because he went to the emergency room, we took him to the emergency room, he didn't take that because everything happened, and so he became constipated. So he asked them to give him something, but what they gave him was something like industrial strength. And so I was in his room and stuff, and he, you know, it kind of came up that he felt like he had to go. And so what happened is the nurse pulled out all the leads and stuff, and so he could go, and the bathroom's right there in the room, and so we drew the curtain and all of a sudden there's like this, BAM! And the nurse said, "Oh my God!" because it was incredibly loud, and he slammed the toilet seat down before he sat on it, like father, like son.